I'm Eric Scripseth, and my project is an exploration of some of the ethical issues that revolve around reclaiming abandoned coal surface mines. This screenshot shows two different posts that the Moshannon Creek Watershed Association made on Facebook about the same issue. Almost nobody looked at the one on the right. The one on the left had a lot of angry comments and quite a bit of interaction. And a lot of it was the power of the headline and the photograph that went with it. And much of the anger was about the local impacts of coal mine reclamation. There were people with an individualistic perspective asking why they are paying to clean up somebody else's mess. We'll discuss that a little bit more later. We did expect that. What we didn't expect was the anger from the short-term local impacts of the mine reclamation. The best quote on that was the one down here below. Most of the mines by me were covered with trees, and you came in and ripped them out and just put for grass. Now it looks like an old landfill. Thanks for that. It looked better before. It's just another way to waste other people's money. Now, the person who posted this thought that somehow the Watershed Association was actually doing the mine reclamation, and that was not accurate, and we corrected that. But his response to the impact of the mine reclamation had me thinking about what are some of the issues that are associated with it. The area that we are talking about is in central Pennsylvania. We'll zoom out just a little bit so you get a little bit more acclimated. Here's Interstate 80 running west to east. This is the west branch of the Susquehanna. It wanders around all over the place, but it does eventually go over to the Chesapeake Bay off to the right and bottom of the screen. This is Moshannon Creek, and it flows from south to north, and it is the county line between Center County and Clearfield County. The mines that we're talking about, that the guy was angry about, were in this site where Peel once was. Peel is an actual ghost town. And we'll zoom into this area here on this other map. This imagery is from about 2015, and it was before these mines were reclaimed. The mines that were being discussed were right along here and in this area down below. And as you can see, when you zoom in, there is essentially a cliff where they stopped mining. That's called a high wall. There's an open cut where they had dug down to the coal. And there's all this material, all these parallel rows of overburden that was dumped on the downhill side of the mine. You can see that there are trees growing all over this thing. And this is happening even though it's pretty damaged land. And the person that made that post was angry that the forest was destroyed in order to reclaim the mine. This is the first part of of the discussion here. You can see here an unreclaimed surface mine, and it's managing to grow trees even though the land is almost completely nothing but lumps of mine spoil. Pennsylvania's wet enough that trees will grow just about any place, or they will at least try. And so they're not a very good indicator that the land has been reclaimed. The question we're going to explore here, and this is the same area that was shown in the Google Maps imagery a few few moments ago, this is what it looks like today. This is where the high wall would have been along in this area. This is actually the plateau up above it. We're looking at the edge of it, and we're looking, to the left and right, and there's some space in the middle as well. But in order to fix the mine reclamation, they had to destroy the forest that was there before they started. We've discussed several of the thinkers in the forerunners of today's environmental ideas associated with environmental ethics. John Muir was mostly focused on preservation. His ideas would probably have come into the discussion, if there was one, whether to mine this area at all. It's a little too late to have his ideas apply to a damaged area and whether to reclaim it or not. Gifford Pinchot was focused on conserving natural resources so that they can be used by people in the future. And abandoned mine land without being reclaimed is not usable for much. So you wouldn't even be able to get in there to easily harvest the trees if you did allow the forest to grow. Aldo Leopold, he advocated for nature's own intrinsic value, preserve the ecosystems and work with them. Now, the one thing that isn't really emphasized in our coursework, but is a fact, is Leopold was also a restorationist. His work in Wisconsin in particular was involved in actively altering landscapes to bring them back to a healthier state. There's an environmental ethics focus called the 3 E's: environment, economy, and equity. And the idea of approaching sustainable development is to meet goals in all of these areas. When looking at the idea on mining reclamation, equity and the economy are intertwined. People are harmed financially by reduced property values, lower economic activity, and extra cost for things like treating the drinking water. If you fix them, there's a cost. If you don't fix them, there's an ongoing detrimental impact, and that includes costs. Some of the complaints that people had was that their tax dollars were somehow paying for these reclamations. And if you read this sign at the bottom, you'll see that this was actually paid for by fees that are part of every ton of coal that's sold. So the industry is paying to repair the sins of the past. The companies that did this are long gone, but at least the industry and its activity is paying for the reclamation. Another point to be made is that much of the reason for reclamation has to do with water quality. You can have trees growing on mine sites and still have horrible impacts on the water. And this is a good example of that here. This is a drain from near a mine opening for an underground mine. And another point that is often made is everyone is downstream. This is Moshannon Creek before and after its encounters with significant mine water impacts, and the difference is quite obvious. Before you got the mine water, you've got a lot of algae in the water, you've got a lot of life. It's a trout stream up in this area. Downstream in the mine water areas, it is very, very contaminated with acidity. It has a pH of about 4 and a lot of metals in the water, and there's basically no fish and very little other life in the water. Ecological restoration actually has a rather strong ethics focus within it very similar to what doctors use, sort of a do no harm, only work on problems you know how to solve. And also the basic, even the legal ideas associated with coal mine reclamation are set up so that you put the land back to the original contour, and you also reduce the impact on the water. One of the biggest things that I think was a problem with the project at Grass Flat is they really didn't tell people what they were doing and what the end game was, what the long-term goal was. Today, forests are being reclaimed, and this is an example. Our group is actually going to be planting about 2,800 trees here in a month and a half. That's it for this. Oh, one more. Here are the references. You can pause the video here and if you want to research these further.